Okay, we've worked our problem out by hand, trying to understand how 1913 tax rates work. Then we developed our test cases and wrote the code for the test cases based on the ones we worked out by hand, and came up with our test cases, which when we run them, they all failed, fortunately, because we haven't written any code. Now we've got to write the code so the test cases pass. And right here, I've got an improvement to make. Is like, that's a magic number. It's just some number that shows up in a program, and somehow the program works, and it may not be obvious why. And we really ought to create a constant for that. And so I'm going to call this insignificant difference. And constants is constant case, all uppercase. And I'm just going to put this here. So it's given a label to that number. And then I'll say this, and it makes our code a little bit easier to read. So insignificant difference, what I'm considering that. If we need to change it for some reason, we can come here and change it. But it makes my code a little bit different, easier to read. Have an insignificant difference there. Okay, so now the real bulk of our problem is, how do we do this? We had drawn out a picture, and so you can go back there, but basically we need to calculate, well, how much tax on each of those different rates do we pay? And how I'm going to approach this, and you may approach it differently, is I'm going to just start off with the annual income and then figure out, okay, if it's greater than such and such a rate, then I need to take that additional and figure out how much tax to pay, and then remove it from the total, and then keep going down the tax bracket. And so, and along the way, I'm going to be calculating what is the total tax. So for each of the different rates. So I'm going to start off with total tax, and then income remaining. And initially, that's just going to be annual income, right? That's how much we're starting with. And then if income remaining is greater than, say, the top tax rate, anything over 500,000 is at 7%. So anything over 500,000, then what we're going to do is say that portion that's over, tax at 7%. So I'm going to say double portion taxed at rate is equal to be income remaining minus 500,000. And already we got a duplicated value. And in the next couple of weeks, next few weeks, we'll cover some more features. So I'm going to be showing some duplicated code, or code that's pretty similar, but there's actually some Java structures in the next month or so that we'll find very useful for simplifying this sort of code. Okay. And so portion that I want taxed at 7%. And so I can do that. And so double tax on portion is portion taxed at rate. So the amount above 500,000 times 0.07, 7%. And so that much tax I'll have to pay on any income over 500,000. And so total tax accumulates tax on portion. Okay, but then now that I've been taxed on that portion, I need to remove that from my income. And so my income remaining, remove portion taxed at rate. Okay, So I figured out what portion is above 500,000, calculate the tax on it, accumulate that tax, and then figure out what's remaining. And that basically, and I'm just going to copy code here. As I mentioned, there's some features in the future that will help us simplify this some more. But I'm just going to copy this for these different rates right now. And then we've got to go in and say 250 is 6%. 250 is 6%. And then anything over 100 is 5%. And then 175 is 4%. And frankly, sometimes the problems may be best done by hand and working out all the details, and then you can figure out later on what's common and simplify them. But sometimes it just takes doing this. So 50,000, and then it was 50,000, 20,000. And so 20,000 is at 0.02, and then income remaining so is anything over 0, and this is actually simplified, is 1%. So portion tax at income remaining minus 0, and so it could just be income remaining, right? Or we could simplify this as just income remaining, and then tax on portion, total tax, and then there's nothing left. Okay, and calculate tax. Well, that's what we've been calculating all along, total tax. So I'll return total tax. This is duplicated code. In the future, we'll see how to simplify that, see some features. Okay, so I've made an attempt at how I approached it on the hand diagram that I was working out. Then I've written some code, and we've already got our test cases written. So what we can do is just let's run it and see how our test cases do. Calculate tax, passed. In other words, it calculated within a small degree, insignificant difference, that on income it should have been around 10, and 25,000 pay 300, 65,000 pay 1,250, and all the tests passed. And so here's one way of calculating for our revenue tax rate, or simplified version from 1913, income tax, and a program to do it.